All right, what is up, guys? Thank you for tuning back into the Keep It Hoop podcast. We're about 2 weeks away now from opening night, and before we go ahead and do our full-on predictions of awards, standings, all that kind of stuff, I wanted to do a little bit of an impromptu episode to just talk about some of the things in the NBA, updates, thoughts, stuff like that. Um, I think the one that's most relevant and something we're all probably keeping an eye on is the James Harden situation. It's been pretty interesting. Um, going into this offseason, I don't know. Obviously, James has been on Houston for a while now. And granted, he was on the Thunder to start his career. He has kind of set himself up to be the face of the franchise, not only for his generation, but overall. Like, you think of Houston greats, and Harden's going to be up there now. Um, and as is the case with a lot of stars, until a trade happens, it's hard to picture them in a different jersey. Um, So like I don't it was weird. Like, I didn't go into the offseason thinking Harden was gonna ask out. I didn't think he was gonna get traded, and he hasn't yet. And I personally don't think he will, because Houston seems pretty adamant on keeping him. Um, and they can take that stance because Harden has, I think, 3 years left on his contract, right? So, if you just go by the basics of negotiating, like, Houston has no reason to trade James besides the fact that James wants out. Like, they don't need to do anything. Harden doesn't really have any leverage here. The only leverage he has is he's going to be unhappy, and Houston might say, all right, unhappy Harden is better than anything we can get in the market for you anyways. We'll take it. Because they still have to think about the message they send to their fans. And you're still thinking about, obviously, winning, jersey sales, all that kind of stuff, right? Well, we saw over the weekend Harden was pictured at a club partying, with no mask on, which I think a lot of people were kind of upset and disappointed by, with the climate of everything going on in the world right now, the pandemic. Um, not the best picture to be, to have taken. Um, but Stephen A was talking about how Harden did that, not the no mask or the no mask part, but Stephen A did talk about how he made it, he made sure that he was pictured out partying to send Houston a message. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but look, right? Actions speak louder than words, and he obviously is he's sending a message, whether it was through the picture or through his action. But the fact that he's supposed to be in Houston, and apparently he arrived today, but he was supposed to be in Houston before today, and he prioritized a birthday party in Houston, not in Houston, at a club. Um, doesn't send the best message, obviously, to Houston, in terms of front management or front office and the management. It isn't a good message to send to your teammates or the fans. And really, I think fans of the NBA in general, right? Because you look at the last two guys that Harden has, for lack of better word, kind of kicked out in terms of big name point guards. Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook. Now, James Harden is a better individual player than both right now, but the one thing you can never question about both Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook was heart and competitiveness. Um, and unfortunately for Harden, that is one of the biggest things that people question about him. I think he wants to win. Um, right? But the professionalism and the heart and the kind of Mamba mentality, if you will, of I'll do anything to win, that I don't know if Harden has. And look, he's not the only one. There are there are a lot of stars in the NBA, and you can expand this to NFL and other sports, but a lot of stars who want to win, right? Obviously, if you give them an option, do you want to win or lose? They're gonna pick win. But in the same boat, a lot of those guys who want to win on their accord, want to win as the guy, want to win with their favorite teammates, want to win being the highest paid player. Um, which is why it's impressive that like Steph, right? Steph hasn't won a Finals MVP. Obviously, I'm sure he wants a Finals MVP if you ask him, but at the end of the day, like he just wants to win at all costs. And maybe it means giving up shots to KD. Maybe it means taking a lesser role. Maybe it means, having worse individual statistics so that you can be the one hoisting the Larry O'Brien trophy at the end. And again, Harden's definitely not the only guy, but I don't think Harden has that in him. And maybe he proves us wrong. Maybe he proves me wrong, but it's a little disappointing. Look, I get it. You want to be traded, but one, the whole mask thing, and then two, to just. I feel like even if you want to be traded, there are better ways to handle it. Look, I'm not gonna lie and say I'm the biggest Harden fan. I love this game in OKC. I love that whole team really. Obviously, KD was fun to watch and a unicorn at the time, and then Russ, explosive, just trying to dunk everything, and the intensity he brought, super fun to watch. And I thought James was a modern day Manu. Obviously, Manu was still in the league, but he brought Manu and his play style, put a remix to it, and then really shined, right? And I mean, that OKC team was really fun to watch, and I was a fan of Harden. Admittedly, less so now than I was then, but still, I want Harden, to do better, because I feel like at the end of the day, like he's kind of become, along with Kyrie and Paul George, those guys that kind of just become not the laughing stock. That's a bad word. But they've kind of become like the butt of a lot of jokes in the NBA. Part of it's the way they handle the media. Part of it's the way they play. Not really Kyrie, but Paul George and James Harden. Part of it's how they play in the playoffs and in big games. Some of it is warranted, I guess, but it is disappointing, I think, to see the way he handled it. Look, if he wants to get traded, look, we're in a generation now where NBA players, and particularly the stars, have a lot of power. This is as close, at least off the top of my head, as we've seen to an NBA player exercising, something similar to like a holdout in the NFL, right? Again, it's the asking for a trade part I don't really care about. It happens. You want to win. It's not like Harden sold it, just like gave up from the get. He tried. Did he perform the best in some of those playoff series, especially against Golden State? No, but you can't say he didn't give it his all in terms of like effort on the court. So again, the asking for a trade part is fine, but not the best look, I'd say, considering just like the image he already has and everything going on. That being said, again, I don't think Houston trades him. They just got Christian Wood, John Wall, and Boogie. I think they're gonna try a little bit of a different play style now that D'Antoni's gone, and I think Houston's again adamant on running it back, seeing what they can do with this new squad, and trying to milk as much out of Harden as they can. And look, I would too. Like 3 years on his contract, you know. Again, they have no reason to trade him, and I think the only one that makes sense is the Ben Simmons trade. I think Levert and Dinwiddie are solid to good, but I think you only do it if you can get a franchise level kind of talent in return. And Ben Simmons is the only one that's available, presumably, right? Like Philly hasn't come out and said that they'd be willing to trade Ben Simmons, but I think he's the most likely to go out of Embiid. And then if you look at Brooklyn, KD and Kyrie, because they're not going to be moved. So, and now that James said he's open to being traded to Philly, I think that's a possibility. Don't think it happens this year though. At least not until All-Star, or not. There's no All-Star game, but not until like mid-season. And Houston's definitely going to need to at least try it out and see and make sure that, okay, it's over. But yeah, I don't think he gets, he's going to go into the season as a Rocket. And then speaking of John Wall, we'll touch a little bit on the John Wall Russell Westbrook trade. I was thinking of doing a video on John Wall, so if that ends up happening, stay tuned for that. But I think if you look at it from really far back, it seems somewhat like a sidestep for both teams. Like, right, similar player, relatively athletic slashers who aren't the best jump shooters. Want/need the ball in their hands a lot. Can be good defenders when engaged. Injury problems. Osiris, who's been on the show before, talked about how he thinks John Wall's a better fit next to Harden than Russ was. I think it's definitely a point there. Because he brought up the fact that John Wall was shooting like, high 30s percentage-wise on catch and shoot threes. I don't know exactly how many he took, but I think it's fair to say John Wall's a better shooter than Russ. And that's not saying a lot, right? But I can see it. I genuinely don't know. And it's going to be, I will say, regardless of the on-court play style, there's the other aspect of, like, John Wall's another alpha, right? Like, John Wall came into the league as the guy, started his career as the guy, and, one thing where that kind of, supposed rumor, but got in between Wall and Beal at times was that, they both thought like they were the best player on the team. And that isn't always the worst thing, right? If you can be fine with not being like best friends off the court and on the court, and as long as you get, stuff done, I think it's fine. Like Kobe and Shaq is a prime example of that, right? But like Harden's obviously an alpha, and he's been the alpha of his team for a while now. The only thing is, like, what's that dynamic going to be like? Because Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook both had a problem with James Harden not being held accountable, right? Now there's a new coaching staff and all that, so maybe that changes. But if a similar thing happens, like John Wall doesn't take BS from anyone. He's not going to back down. He's going to call you out if you're not playing well, if you're, making mistakes, if you're being lazy. If something like that happens, I want to see what that dynamic looks like as well. Because the one thing people pointed to with Russ and James was, like, these two go way back, right? Super close friends. If anyone can keep James Harden accountable, stand up to him, and kind of reel him in, should be Russ. Russ apparently couldn't, right? For whatever reason, whether it's D'Antoni told him not to, or Harden wouldn't listen, or Russ just didn't really want to. It didn't work, right? So I don't know. I think that's going to be another interesting thing to keep track of, because I think keeping Harden engaged and accountable is important, because ultimately, regardless of how good Christian Wood, Boogie, John Wall is, that team is still going to go as far as James Harden takes them on both sides of the ball, right? So, look, is he engaged defensively when they need him to be? They don't need him to be, Drew Holiday, but, is he trying? Is an offense? Is he attacking? Is he, staying aggressive? Is he settling? I think those things are still problems regardless of the fit with Wall. So definitely things that they're going to have to kind of figure out. Westbrook to Washington is still, again, interesting for similar reasons why John Wall and Beal, I think, while they won in the regular season and made some playoff runs, probably never got the most out of each other. Again, Russ is a ball dominant guy. Beal's a good shooter, and he can definitely play off the ball, but he showed last year what he can do when he's the primary ball handler and offensive facilitator and option. And Russ said he this year wants to go to a place where he can run the offense and be the floor general again. And a floor general you can do in multiple ways, because you can do kind of the Chris Paul / to a lesser degree, but John Wall situation where you do really have the ball in your hands for 16 seconds of the shot clock, 18 seconds, and then you make something happen. I think that's better for when the rest of your team isn't that great, like what Chris Paul was able to do when he was in New Orleans. Hold the ball, get something at the end of the shot clock. But if you have another guy like Bradley Beal, where you want him to have his room, his space, his opportunities to create and do him. And I think Russ's style is closer to Chris Paul's than, say, like a Jason Kidd, where you don't need the ball for 18 seconds. You just make the right pass when it's there. You empower your teammates instead of doing everything for them. So I think it's still going to be interesting. Russ always has, and even with John Wall as well, they have that angry streak that you don't want to play them when they're angry and motivated. So with the way Russ ended the season last year in the playoffs, where he just didn't look like himself in the bubble, because he played through, we talked about this on our podcast multiple times, but he looked really good at parts of the season last year. Like, he was out playing Harden at times. But he ended the season really bad. So, he's going to be motivated. He's going to be playing for his old coach in Scott Brooks, wearing his high school number 4. Maybe he comes out rejuvenated, renewed, super motivated, and we might see the Russell Westbrook from mid last season. And if that's the case, and maybe John Wall isn't 100%, then yeah, Washington gets way better than they were last year, and you still have Russell Westbrook, Bradley Beal, Denny, Rui, Bertans and Thomas O'Brien. That's a really solid team, especially in the East. So, I think it was a fine trade. I think I like it. I think both sides get what they wanted in a lot, pretty much. I will say for the Rockets, it's going to be interesting to watch, because I've always been a fan of Boogie and John Wall. So I think seeing them both motivated coming back from injuries, and because if they're both somewhat healthy, right, even if they're not 100%, those guys are still matchup nightmares. Guys who are bullies, guys who play with a mean streak, and it could be fun to watch. Just dogs like that out there, and bullying people and now you finally have a real center against so PJ Tucker doesn't have to play center at 6'5". So, bless his soul. Um, a couple other things that have happened recently. Um, Paul George was on the All the Smoke podcast, and he had kind of talked about how the Clippers didn't make any adjustments. He actually said he felt like Doc Rivers was trying to play him like a Ray Allen or a JJ Redick with a lot of pin downs and stuff, and he said, he could do that, but that wasn't his game. Doc Rivers had a funny shot back, kind of joking. He said, Ty Lue was sitting right next to me. It's not going to be much different this year. Matt Barnes, who's on All the Smoke, right, said he was on ESPN, I think The Jump, and he said he thinks Paul George is actually thinking too much and is in his head. And I agree. I kind of tweeted about this the other day, but I do think Paul, over the years, again, he's one of those guys that has kind of become a meme slash part of a lot of jokes in the NBA. And obviously he's a really good player. Right? Like he can slash, he can pass, shoot the three, can defend. He does, I think, and this is part of the post I posted as well, but like the one thing, no Sirius brings this up a lot, but one thing that we as fans and just people in the media in general as well talk about is honesty and candidness from the players. Paul George definitely has some of that, right? And I think there are times where guys like him, Kyrie, and KD get criticized for being honest. But there are also times when Paul George talks about, or just talks when it's not necessary, if you will, like the Dame chatter and, there's certain criticism and then just saying things when he doesn't necessarily need to. Again, the honesty is 100% fine, but there are times where it just feels like it's better for him to stay quiet and play. And this isn't like a shut up and dribble thing, because if it's if it's interviews or if it's about, just being open, if it's about politics or social issues, then by all means, please speak up. But there are times where he doesn't need to say anything, and he does, and I think he steps on his own toes a bit. Look, regardless of what he said or didn't say, the way he played in the playoffs last couple of years, he's gonna get criticized because he's a star at this point, right? But I think it's under a microscope, and it's even worse, and it's exaggerated because of things like calling himself playoff P, which in hindsight is now super rough on him with all the jokes that people have. But it's like that, and then I'm failing to come up with certain examples, but I want to like Paul George, I want to root for him, but he does make it hard sometimes. And I think at this point, with everything that he said and that has happened, the only way he's gonna kind of escape that is to win. Right? Winning shuts everyone up to a degree. I'll say to a degree, because KD's won, LeBron's won, and obviously they still get probably more hate, criticism, and jokes than anyone. But I think you have to just win, right? And I think, look, with the internet, troll culture, and just social media being the way it is, the more you address fans and the more you seem impacted, or not even hurt, but just affected by them, the more people are going to continue to do so. People like attention. People want to feel connected to these athletes, whether in a positive or negative manner. I remember, I think it was after the Dame thing, and people were really going at Paul George, and he said, whatever you guys say doesn't bother me. that kind of seemed like it almost felt like him saying that showed that like he was reading these messages, and it was affecting him in some sort of way, right? And I think at the end of the day, like I think this is one of the things Kobe was really good at. And granted, Kobe didn't play. Kobe's prime wasn't along with the 100% social media engagement days of today, but he was pretty good at, because obviously Kobe had obviously many fans, but an insane amount of haters and detractors. Kobe really didn't care. He might have read it, and he might not have even read them because he cared so little, but he really didn't care what people said about him. And again, it is harder nowadays when social media is just so much more prevalent than when Kobe was in his prime, but and it's hard to not care about what people say these days. But I mean, if you're strong enough and if you're able to really push that out, then I think it really does help. Like Dame strikes to me as another guy that really doesn't care about what people say. He'll clap back at players and fans now, every now and then, but it doesn't seem to like get in his head. Whereas Paul George, I think it does, and I think he just needs to go back to having fun on the court. Because again, I can't read into his mind, but it does seem like there are times where he's on the court, especially in the playoffs or in those kind of tough moments, where he's overthinking about what are the people on Twitter going to say, what are the jokes going to be, what is my legacy slash, what's at stake here. And I think he's someone that, I don't know, again, I don't know what's going on, but it does sometimes seem like he's overthinking, he's in his own head, and he's just not having fun anymore. If he can get back to that, I think it'd be huge for him. Load management rule, right? With fines now being given out to players when they're like load managing on like nationally televised games. I get that from an NBA perspective, and I guess it's the best way they could do this without saying no load management at all. So what this just means is teams are now just going to load manage on games before probably nationally televised games, maybe after, depending on who the opponent is. But, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, teams are still going to load manage, right? Because the NBA can't say, okay, you can't load manage at all. So guys like Kawhi, LeBron, and AD or whoever else is gonna load manage. They're gonna load manage on just non-nationally televised games. I think it's the best that the NBA could have done to satisfy the TV networks and the advertisers, and the fans that will end up going to the arenas in in the future. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it changes too much. Nationally televised games should be a little better though, so you don't have games where it's like literally two backup squads playing against each other, right? Because some of those games are just right, like you sit down, whether it's like Sunday afternoon or Friday night, or TNT on what is it, Thursday nights, and yeah, all right, long day of work. Let me sit down, watch some good basketball, and then you gotta watch. Right, like one team's best player is going to be Ish Smith going up against like other team's best player is going to be like Marcus Morris. No offense to those guys, but come on now, right? Like, so nationally televised games should be a little better, but load management's still going to happen on non-nationally televised games, obviously. Other than that, though, a couple other things that I guess that were on my mind. Isaiah Thomas is someone that I hope we get to see this year. Apparently, he had been telling teams he was fine the last couple years just so he could get a job, but he really wasn't. He couldn't even like bend down and tie his own shoelace. But from what I hear, and himself and just like guys around him, he's really starting to blow past people again, and he's not young anymore, but he is only was it 3 years removed from, maybe 2, maybe 3 now, right? 3 years removed from being a former close to an MVP candidate, right? That run with Boston was really crazy. I mean, the numbers he was putting up, just the plays, and to play at that size, and to make that playoff run was just really insane. As a short player myself, he's someone obviously I look up to, and just super fun to watch. Hopefully he's back. He's been through a lot in his life and his career, so fingers crossed that he really gets an opportunity. Other than that, we do have a couple college videos up on YouTube. Jalen Suggs one has gotten pretty good reviews so far. I think it's around 100 views now, so thanks everyone for that. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's about a 25-minute video breaking down his first college game against Kansas. So it's not against no-name school. Really liked what he's shown. Really under control and mature game for someone his age. Can do a little bit of everything, so it was really fun to break down his game. Evan Mobley is the second college breakdown I did. Super unique player. I think he has Bam-like capabilities to a degree. I don't think he's the athlete Bam is, and he's not as fluid with his motions, but he doesn't really have any holes in his game. Do a little passing, has a little bit of a post move, can hit the jump shot. I think his jump shot's better than Bam's is and was. Defensively, he can switch. He can block shots. I was impressed with him too. So that video's up. Definitely go check that out. Melo, and when we say Melo, we mean Carmelo Anthony, right? I'm tired of LaMelo Anthony getting the Melo nickname. There's only one Melo. It's Carmelo Anthony. You guys got to stop it. But Melo got his braids back. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. Other than that, though, yeah, I mean, not too much. Obviously, again, 2 weeks away from the season. Hopefully next week, maybe this weekend, but probably next week, we'll do an episode on, again, predictions, standings, award predictions. Talk about, teams to look for, players to look for, all that good stuff. And our website got a little bit of a remake. We just changed the theme and the visuals a bit. www.keepithoop.wordpress.com, so go check that out. And yeah, thanks for listening, guys. We're going to try to put this up on YouTube as well. So if you'd rather listen to the podcast on YouTube, you can do that. Spotify, Apple Podcast, Spreaker, all that good stuff. But yeah, thanks for the support as always, guys. We're definitely, still growing. Trying to double down, triple down, and continue to invest and really make this thing grow. So any support is appreciated. Follows, likes, thumbs up, subscriptions, notifications, all of that. Appreciate it. Go follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And just keep an eye out on new stuff. We're continuously trying to get more stuff out. Oh, and also if you guys yourself or know anyone that wants to, contribute to this thing we're trying to do, right? Whether it's help us post on social media, maybe help us out with the podcast, video. But let us know. You can just DM us on Twitter, message us on Facebook. You can even tag us or DM us on Instagram. We're always looking for people who want to either contribute or collaborate. But yeah, thanks for the support, and stay tuned. Thanks, guys.